What's up, y'all? You're watching Union Minded. I'm your host, Eric, and today we're going to get right back into the meat and potatoes of IBEW Local 26 Union Life, the Inside Wireman's Agreement, and our series of Contract Talk. This is where we educate each other. We read along and we learn what are the rules governing our work sites that we work on as Local 26 members. Now, this is particular to Local 26, but it is not exclusive to Local 26, as every IBEW local has a Wireman's Agreement or a CBA that was negotiated. Now, for us here at 26 right now, we're currently in the midst of our negotiating cycle, and our contract is up next year in May, so we should have something to vote on early next year. But right now, there's negotiations going on, and it's important for us to know what our work lives, the laws guiding our work lives are, so that we know what we want to advocate for, and so that when we talk to each other, we know what the hell we're talking about. We're going to pick up at 4.04. We left off in the last video, we left off at 4.03, which was faulty workmanship. We're picking up at 4.04. This is Foreman Authority, page 20 of your Inside Wireman's Agreement. Grab your Wireman Agreement, jump in, and let's talk together. Foreman Authority. On jobs having a foreman, workers are not to take directions or accept the layout of any job from anyone except the foreman or sub-foreman on the job, or other management representative of the employer in charge of the project. Now, when we talk about the employer in charge of the project, we know that from earlier in our Contract Talk series, when this contract uses the word employer, it is talking about a signatory contractor that is bound by the rules in this rule book, okay? It is not talking about your GC that runs the overall project. The GC is not an employer of IBEW Local 26 members. The GC runs an entire project and hires or subcontracts an electrical contractor. That electrical contractor is then the employer that employs us as workers. Okay, so knowing those definitions, when we read this, we can understand what they're saying. It says, on jobs having a foreman, workers are not to take directions or accept the layout of any job from anyone except the foreman or sub-foreman on the job, or other management representative of the employer in charge of the project. So sliding in that management representative is a little ambiguous, because it allows for a contractor to create a leadership position that is not a foreman and ask for our members to take those leadership positions without proper compensation. Now, I don't believe you can be forced to take any position that you don't want to take. And so I would advise folks not to take any additional responsibilities without being compensated. And there is nothing in our rule book that compensates you financially outside of what's already written in here, which is your apprentice, your journeyman, your foreman 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. These are that's how your wage scale is guided. They don't have an outside classification for that. Ambiguous. I think we should clean that up and make it less ambiguous and more direct. Section 4.05 states, superintendents, on jobs where there is a foreman, the superintendent or other management representative will direct work only through the foreman. So here, once again, you got two rules that are contradictory, because under foreman authority, it states that workers are not to take direction or accept the layout of any job from anyone except for the foreman or sub-foreman. But then it adds in, or other management representative. Well, that means that a superintendent can possibly lay you out, but that contradicts with foreman authority. And then under superintendent, it says, on jobs where there is a foreman, the superintendent works through the foreman. This is the chain of command. But 4.04 leaves a room for the superintendent to step in and tell someone else to do something. So these are rules that conflict a little bit, and I think we need to clean that up. Section 4.06 talks about the age ratio. On all jobs requiring 5 or more journeymen, at least every 5th journeyman, if available, shall be 50 years of age or older. That's a good rule to have. In this industry where your body gets beat up doing this work, it's important to leave slots for our older members who maybe can't go all out the way the younger folks can, who still have their mobility and everything else from not being beat up. And we still need to employ folks that get into the older age brackets because they're still eligible for work. They're still eligible to work, and there's wisdom up there that needs to be imparted upon the younger generation coming up. So we have to keep those folks employed. Section 4.07, personal vehicles. This is one of my personal favorites. Workers shall not use personal vehicles for the transporting of material or employer's tools. Remember that. You might have a foreman who thinks he's a little slick and wants to have you move something from one job to another using your personal vehicle. They can't do that. It's your personal vehicle. It's not a company vehicle. God forbid something happens en route from one job to the other, and your personal vehicle doing something for the company, and your personal vehicle gets totaled. Your insurance is going to treat you as if you were liable, even though you were doing something for the company, and they should, by all rights, rectify the situation. Don't leave yourself out there to hang on the hoping of nothing going wrong. Protect yourself against something possibly going wrong. Prepare for the inevitable and protect yourself. Section 4.08, we're talking transfer time. When a worker is to report to a new job for the next day's work, he shall be notified at least a half an hour prior to quitting time the previous day and allowed sufficient time to gather his personal tools and equipment. They can't hit you with a transfer at the end of the day and not give you time to gather your tools and get yourself off of that job site properly on their dime. Do not allow a foreman to tell you to go to a separate job at the end of the day without giving you your half-hour transfer time. That is money that belongs to you. Everything in here is supposed to help make work life standardized so that we all understand what the rules are. But so few of us read this that many folks who get into a position of foremanship will abuse the workers that are coming up, that are in their charge. And it might be something as simple as they just don't know because they haven't read the contract. So I'm telling you, read your contract, understand your contract. 4.09 talks about overtime distribution. I can't tell you how many jobs that I've been on where they had a special clique that they awarded all the overtime hours to. Not that I'm Mr. Go hard for overtime. I'm not. Overtime is meant to be a detraction for contractors to not plan their work poorly in order to require overtime. Overtime is meant to be a punishment to the contractors, not a carrot for us. We're not supposed to be like, ooh, hungry fish, overtime. I want some overtime. It's not supposed to be what we do. But anyway, when there is overtime, the distribution is guided by 4.09, and it says, no worker shall be sent from one job to work on an overtime job unless all workers on such overtime job are employed. However, wait a second, let me reread that because I think I skipped a spot. No worker shall be sent from one job to work on an overtime job unless all workers on such overtime job are employed. However, any employee who has received a written warning relevant to performance from the employer in excess of 72 hours prior to the overtime shall forfeit his or her claim to overtime work. Superintendents and or job foremen shall make equitable distribution of any overtime among all workers on any job or building. Another very ambiguous statement. No worker shall be sent from one job to work on an overtime job unless all workers on such overtime job are employed. So that means if you're working on a job and there's another job that shifts to an overtime schedule because they're under a tight timeline and they got to make the timeline, they can't, on that second job that goes to overtime, they can't request outside workers unless everybody on that job is working and they still need more manpower. Then they can request outside workers to come in. But then they put in here, any employee who has received a written warning relevant to performance from the employer in excess of 72 hours prior to the overtime shall forfeit his or her claim to overtime work. So if you got a written warning that's relevant to performance, that's something that can be skewed by a foreman who has a axe to grind. So I don't like that rule at all, and I think that should be stricken. I don't think what I did yesterday has anything to do with the work that's coming up on Saturday, and I think it's horse crap that we have it written into our contract as if that's something that we should accept as yellow ticket carrying IBEW members. I disagree with this rule wholeheartedly, and hope that our negotiating team works on amending this section 4.09 to be more union worker friendly and less contractor friendly. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Section 4.10 is where we will leave it. This says safety measure on all energized circuits or equipment operating at 277 volts or more, and or on any energized circuits rated 1000 amps or more. As a safety measure, 2 or more journeyman wiremen must work together. They shall be supplied with proper tools and protective equipment for such work. That's on all energized circuits operating at 277 or more, or on any energized circuits rated 1000 amps or more. 2 journeymen minimum must work together and be supplied with the proper tools and protective equipment for such work. So don't allow anyone to put you to work by yourself in this situation. You have it right here in your contract. Section 4.10 says you are required to have a second journeyman with you. Make sure you keep a copy of your contract, whether it's digitally on your phone or physically in your lunchbox or both. And don't be afraid to pull it out and use it. That's why we pay for officers to negotiate a contract, so that we can have it. It guides our work life. Use it. All right. My name's Eric. You're watching Union Minded. Remember, the fight is not left and right. It is up and down. It's going to take class solidarity to win always. Each one teach one. Get out there and reach one. And don't forget, there could be no union without you and I, front and center. Peace out.